I lost everything, but on the streets I found a life-changing purpose. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The chill in the air, the weight in my chest. I stood there, numb, watching my life, the one I thought I had, slip away like sand through my fingers. The night was dark and ominous. My heart pounded like a drum, echoing in the silence. All around me, shadows darted, whispering secrets I'd never know. I was 100 miles from home, a wild child in a city that felt like the underbelly of a dream. Once I was someone, an artist, a daughter. But after that fateful day, I became a specter. I wandered the streets, breathing in the scent of despair, the metallic tang of fear. My family, my friends, they vanished one by one, swallowed by my own failures. Loneliness wrapped around me like a heavy cloak, and hope felt like a distant star. But in that chaos, something strange began to stir within me. It was as if the city was alive, breathing, pulling me deeper into its tangled web. I stumbled upon alleyways that glowed with vibrant graffiti, each tag telling a story I couldn't understand. I met others like me, lost and searching. Some were broken, and some were extraordinary. I remember the night I met Sam. He was draped in a patchwork blanket, eyes sparkling like the lights of the city. "You have to see this," he said, his voice a silky whisper. He led me to a gathering beneath an overpass, where the air hummed with energy. There were poets reciting verses that cut through the darkness, musicians strumming guitars in the moonlight. It was raw, thrilling. I felt something shift in me, a flicker of hope igniting. Could this be my purpose? But then, there were moments of fear. Shadows lurked in corners, menacing, waiting. I noticed quick glances from passers-by, their expressions flickering between pity and disgust. The world was unforgiving. I could feel judgment seeping into my bones, yet still, I held on to that flicker. As I wandered the streets, each day unfolded with new color, sights, and sounds that I craved. But what lay ahead? I could feel it in the pit of my stomach, the question, the challenge, the unknown that beckoned me deeper. Would I rise or fall again? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The morning light crept in through the alleyways, casting long shadows that intertwined with the remnants of last night's gathering. Sam had promised we'd meet again, a pact formed beneath the dizzying buzz of spoken word and strummed chords. Yet, as I stepped into the frantic pulse of the city, a sinking feeling pulled at my heart. Would he return? Or had the fleeting magic of that evening vanished, along with everything else I once held dear? I wondered, my feet carrying me aimlessly through the thrumming streets. With every step, conversations from the night before echoed in my mind, the laughter, the passion, the unspoken understanding. Art, in all its forms, had woven an invisible thread between the lost and the hopeful, binding our stories together in the most unexpected ways. But the reality of my own existence pulled me back from that euphoria, yanking me back into the harsh light of day. A woman sat on the sidewalk, her back against a graffiti-covered wall. She gripped a cardboard sign that read, "Just a chance." There was something kind in her weary eyes, as if she had absorbed the sorrows of countless souls while clinging to her own flickering flame. I paused, my heart aching for her. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the crumpled bills I'd saved me breakfast money. "Here," I whispered, the words catching in my throat. Her expression shifted from one of surprise to gratitude, and for a moment, I felt lighter. It was a small act, but in that exchange, I recognized the warmth of kindness, something that seemed almost foreign in a world where survival had turned us into ghosts. As I continued my trek, I approached a park where a small crowd gathered. Artists' painted murals live, their movements fluid and empowering. I felt an irresistible call towards the canvas, and without realizing it, I found myself standing before it, transfixed. The vibrant strokes told stories of resilience and hope, the colors bleeding into one another in a mesmerizing dance. "Want to try?" A voice broke through my reverie. It was a young man with paint-speckled hands, an easy smile lighting up his features. We could use some fresh energy. The invitation stirred something within me, a faint echo of the artist I once was. As I took the brush and dipped it into the paint, I felt the pulse of my heartbeat sync with the rhythm of the moment. With each stroke, memories sparked. Childhood afternoons spent painting in my backyard, surrounded by the laughter of my family, the smell of fresh-cut grass. Each stroke told a story, a catharsis swept from my soul. But just as I began to lose myself in the canvas, the laughter faded, replaced by a harsh shout from the edge of the crowd. A group of men, faces taut with anger, approached, their intentions clear. They sneered at the artists, disdain dripping from their voices like venom. "What do you think you're doing here? This isn't your place." My heart raced as I felt the shift in the air. Fear clawed at my gut. A protective urge surged forward. I couldn't let them intimidate those who had so bravely created a space for beauty to bloom amidst the concrete. But what could I do? Panic washed over me, stifling the lightness I'd just begun to embrace. Suddenly, from behind me, a figure emerged. It was Sam, his eyes bright. "Hey, back off," he called out, his voice steady. I watched in awe as he stepped forward, a barrier of courage for both me and the artists. My heart swelled with gratitude. I was not alone. "Let's keep this peaceful," he continued, the confidence in his stance radiating strength. The tension prickled, but in that charged moment, all that mattered was the flicker of connection, the glimmer of hope that spread like wildfire through the tight-knit crowd. But just when I believed the situation could settle, one of the men lunged forward, crossing a line that felt dangerously close. I gasped, fear twisting in my chest. And in that instant, I realized that the streets had not only stripped me of my past, they also threatened to tarnish the glimmers of light I had found. A deafening crack rang out like thunder in the calm sky. A warning shot? Or was it something else entirely? The world narrowed, and time slowed as everyone held their breath, fear painted across their faces. In that moment, I understood the stakes. I had ventured into a world of vulnerability, where hope and despair collided, and right now, both were hanging in the balance. Would I find my voice, or would I allow the shadows to swallow me whole once more? The echoes of that gunshot reverberated through my bones, as if the very ground beneath me was trembling. Fear twisted my stomach into knots, and for the briefest of moments, I forgot to breathe. The crowd instinctively surged back, eyes darting, hearts racing. I felt trapped between the need to run and the desire to stand my ground. Sam turned to me, his expression resolute but edged with worry. "Stay close," he urged, positioning himself between me and the brewing chaos. His steadiness was a lifeline, anchoring me in the whirlwind of uncertainty. I nodded, but my heart thudded in my chest like a war drum, drowning out all rational thought. As voices rose sharply around us, I could hardly process the scene unfolding. A figure emerged from behind the graffiti wall, a boy no older than 16, his eyes wild with terror. "Get back," he yelled, hands trembling as he raised them high, a plea for peace amidst the storm. "Please just go. No one needs to get hurt." The men advanced, their faces twisted with rage, fueled further by the tension that hung in the air. I could feel the collective breath of the crowd, held tight in our throats, weighed down by the knowledge that fear could easily morph into violence. In that split second, A sensation washed over me, a flicker of defiance igniting within my chest. Regret be damned, I thought. I had spent too long living someone else's version of hope, allowing the despair of my own life to overshadow the beauty still waiting to be embraced. I stepped forward, the pulse of my heart resonating with the primal need to speak, to reach out beyond the fear. No one wants violence here. My voice rang out, shaky but clear. The harsh gazes turned toward me, and the room stilled, a fragile balance teetering on the edge of something irreversible. We're all just trying to create this space, this moment. It's for everyone. We can choose how this ends. The anger of the men faltered for just an instant, but doubt crept in. Would they listen? Would I regret taking this step? My words, infused with every ounce of desperation I had, hung above us all. The boy's panicked gaze locked with mine, a shared understanding forging a bond that transcended our fear. Sam took a step beside me, our arms brushing together, a silent corroboration of our shared strength. What she said, he added confidently, his voice resonating with a calming tone. This isn't about who's right or wrong. It's about finding common ground. Yeah, we can be better than this. The crowd responded with a cautious murmur, rallying behind our earnest sentiments, transforming fear into fragile hope. The tension in the air began to morph. Was it possible that empathy and understanding could diffuse this tension before it exploded? I could scarcely believe we were standing against the tide, yet in that moment, it felt like the impossible was somehow within reach. But then, the leader of the group sneered, his eyes narrowing as he took a step forward. My stomach dropped. You think this is a game? That you can just paint over the scars of this city without consequence? He approached us, menacingly close. You want change? You think you can just rewrite the rules? As his voice thundered, the boy I'd seen earlier remained motionless, arms still high, his own pulse quickening in sync with our collective heartbeats. No one is rewriting anything. We're just trying to survive, too, he interjected, his courage giving me the strength I needed right then. But the men, blinded by anger, pushed forward again, fury threatening to boil over. In that instant, a woman burst through the crowd, a complete stranger dressed in tattered yet colorful clothes, her hair eccentric and wild. She stood before the group, arms wide open, as if to embrace not just the ugly, but the beautiful chaos of our world. Everyone, listen! Her voice was a melody cutting through the darkness. We have forgotten how to listen. We've played this game for too long. It was unexpected kindness, an open heart amidst hostility, that reached our frightened spirits. The potency of her words seemed to diffuse the tension. We are capable of building bridges, not walls, she continued, her eyes fierce and compassionate. But just as I felt a flicker of hope reignite, there was a sharp, unexpected sound as shattering glass erupted in the distance. A car had backfired, its noise sharp and brutal. The men seized the moment, their moment of hesitation slipping away to confusion and adrenaline. They surged toward the crowd, and everything descended into a frenzy. Run! Sam yelled, and without thinking, I grabbed his hand, urgency propelling us forward. My heart raced as we maneuvered through bodies, but as the chaos erupted around us, I realized something vital. A piece of myself had emerged amidst the turmoil. I had found my voice in the cacophony, and it resonated with determination. Yet, before I could fully grasp my newfound purpose, I felt a sudden jolt, a force pulling me back. I turned to see the boy, the one who had stood with his hands raised, being shoved aside, thrown to the ground by one of the aggressors. He looked up, fear blending with despair, as he reached out for help. "Help me!" he cried out, his voice breaking through the noise. My heart sank, knowing all too well what it meant to feel helpless, but now I had come too far to simply ignore his plea. "Sam!" I called, but the weight of the moment crested like a wave, threatening to engulf us all. I took a step toward him, feeling the urgency swell in my chest. This was the purpose I had unknowingly sought, Yet wrapped within it was the gnawing realization that I might lose everything again, this time not just for myself, but for someone else entirely. Would I have the strength to face the shadows ahead? Or would the light that flickered back to life fade away in the storm? The crowd surged like a tempest, a chaotic blend of fear and defiance rising from the very ground we stood upon. I felt Sam's hand grip mine tighter, but every fleeting heartbeat reminded me of the boy on the ground, of his desperate need for help. As instinct wrestled with caution, my resolve hardened. This was not the time to back down. I broke free of Sam's grasp, stepping into the fray. My heart raced against the din, a cacophony of shouts and shoving bodies swirling around us. The sight of the boy, a stranger now tangled in a web of aggression and madness, ignited a flame within me. "Stop! You don't have to hurt him," I yelled, forcing my voice to rise above the chaos. I could see the boy's fear transform into a glimmer of hope as he recognized someone was willing to fight for him. The aggressor paused, a momentary flicker of uncertainty passing across his face. Instinctively, I crouched low, scooping the boy up as adrenaline surged through my veins. "Come with me," I urged, pulling him to his feet. He stumbled but regained his footing, the fire of vulnerability fueling a new sense of bravery. I could feel us becoming part of something greater, a collective heartbeat pulsating in defiance of the forces surrounding us. But just as we turned to escape, Sam was suddenly at my side again, eyes wide with alarm. "Are you insane?" he shouted over the noise. "We need to get out of here." His voice registered, but every ounce of my being felt rattled by our choice. Our connection to this boy felt like a delicate thread, one that might snap at any moment. "We can't leave him. He needs our help." The urgency behind my words locked our intentions in place. But even as I spoke, doubt darkened in my mind. What if helping him meant sacrificing my own safety? What would that decision cost me? Sam's face twisted with concern, a flash of panic igniting in his eyes. "What if it's a trap? We don't know what he'll bring with him." His worry wrapped around the words like a heavy cloak, tugging at my resolve. In that tense standoff, a strange serenity washed over me. The chaos raged on, but in the eye of that storm, I felt a sense of clarity. The bonds of fear that had once paralyzed me loosened their grip. I could feel it, a pull toward purpose, toward the boy who had also dared to step forward against impossible odds. Is this how we want to be remembered, Sam? I shouted over the rising tide of chaos, infusing my plea with every ounce of conviction. As bystanders to our own lives? Or as people who stood up for what was right, for each other? Before he could respond, the aggressor shouted again, breaking our momentary diver's eye on a command to grab the boy, to learn the cost of defiance. "Get them!" he bellowed, rage swirling anew. The crowd reacted, frenzied with fear, their instincts pushing them toward safety, but I held tight to the boy's hand, staring into his grateful eyes. "Stick with me, okay?" I breathed, breathless from fear yet emboldened by the flicker of hope igniting in me. We pressed forward, a small, unlikely band navigating the chaos. My heart thundered, and in that madness, I began to realize something profound, that loss can be a ground for renewed connection, for finding those who, like me, fought their own battles. We ducked through the crowd, pushing deeper into the pandemonium, each step a dance between dread and determination. But then something jolted the earth beneath me. The sound of a firecrackering pop echoed, mimicking the gunshot that had paralyzed us moments earlier. A wave of commotion surged past, bodies pushing in every direction. I felt panic surge again, this time joined by the sharp prick of danger. Suddenly, I was separated from Sam and the boy, lost in the swell of frightened faces. "Sam!" I cried, but the noise swallowed my plea whole, and as I spun in a circle, searching for any glimmer of his familiar features, the realization gripped me like ice. I was alone now, amidst the storm. Clarity faded as the lights abruptly dimmed, and I was thrust into an unfamiliar pocket of darkness. Desperation surged through me. Gathering my wits, I took a step forward, only to bump into a hard wall of flesh. The glint in the person's eyes didn't belong to Sam. "Look who we have here," a voice sneered, rough and cruel. I swallowed, dread crawling down my spine. The leader, the instigator, stood before me, a menacing grin splitting his face. "Thought you could just run off with that boy, huh? You're braver than I expected." Panic gripped my chest, and I fought against the vice tightening around my heart. I had come so far, had stepped beyond fear, beyond the shadows of my past. But would it be for nothing? Would I lose hold of everything I had fought to protect? "Let him go," I demanded, the tremor in my voice betraying the weight of my fear. The world around me seemed to hold its breath, a critical moment hungering for resolution. But in the grip of this despair, I knew there was still hope buried in that darkness, the hope that soared, born from bravery, born from the act of reaching out, even when the cost might be everything. Would this be where my journey ended, or the moment I truly found myself by standing my ground? The air thickened around us as I waited for an answer, both terrified and determined to fight for the light. The air felt electric, crackling with unspoken tension as I faced the man blocking my path. His laughter echoed in my ears, like an ominous reminder of the stakes at play. "You think you can save him? You're in way over your head, girl." His dismissive tone cut deep, but within the ache lay a flicker of defiance. "You have no idea what I'm capable of," I shot back, clenching my fists as my pulse roared in my ears. It was a bluff. Of course, my heart was racing, not from bravery, but from sheer terror that threatened to consume me. He stepped closer, and I could smell sweat mixed with cheap cologne, a pungent reminder of the chaos we were tangled in. My confusion intermingled with his repugnant confidence, and for a moment, I felt small. Something in his eyes darkened as he quickly scanned the crowd, sensing that the tide of events was shifting. "Why do you care about some random kid?" he hissed, leaning in as if his rage could intimidate me into submission. "He's nothing to you, and you're nothing to him." And yet, the moment I had lifted the boy off the ground, something powerful had ignited within me, an unbreakable bond forged in the face of violence. The memory of his terrified eyes ignited a fire that burned within, pushing me beyond the brink of fear. "He's worth fighting for," I replied, each word dripping with steadfast resolve. "And I refuse to let you take him." A sudden rush broke through the crowd, a wave of adrenaline surging unnoticed until now. In that moment of vulnerability, something unexpected happened. A girl no older than 16 surged past me, her curls wild and her determination even wilder. She grabbed my arm and pulled me with surprising strength. "This way," she shouted, and I didn't hesitate. We dashed into an alley, shadows enveloping us as we scraped against brick and steel. I could hear the chaos still thrumming in the distance, but at least for now, I was hidden. The girl led me through twists and turns until we rounded a corner and ambushed a deserted street, a barren expanse of cracked concrete lit by flickering streetlights. "What are you doing out there?" she asked, urgency coloring her voice. "They'll kill you for trying to help. I can't just stand by and do nothing," I replied, my voice shaky from the close call, but a hint of pride bubbled beneath my surface. I couldn't abandon him. She studied me for a moment, and I felt her judgment lingering in the air. "They'll make examples out of people like you. You think standing up for someone makes you a hero? It makes you a target." I opened my mouth to argue, but a dull ache pulsed through my heart as I recognized the truth in her words. This fight went beyond bravery. It was a risk that might fracture my soul. For an agonizing second, I hesitated to express my fear. But grounding myself in what I had just faced, I took a breath and glanced at her. "So what's your plan? Just let them take him?" The girl sighed, frustration evident. "I know a way. If you really want to help him, this isn't the place to play the hero." In the distance, Muffled shouts began to fade while sirens echoed a mournful requiem for the lost. An overwhelming sadness washed over me. It was like a tidal wave pulling me under, taunting me with thoughts of helplessness. Yet trapped within, flickers of hope emerged. The relentless drive to achieve change surged unbidden, no matter the chaos surrounding us. Lead the way, I finally affirmed, determination filling that hollow space inside. "Am not backing down." The girl nodded, her eyes brightening slightly. Without another word, she set off again, weaving through shadows like she owned the night. My heart drummed loudly as we sprinted through the streets, shadows playing tricks on my mind. Each time we turned a corner, I glanced back, half expecting to see the leader's menacing figure trailing in our wake. We finally slid into an abandoned warehouse, the air thick with dust and secrets. I gasped as the dim light illuminated shelves scattered with long-forgotten memories, broken furniture, faded photographs. They all felt like echoes of lives once lived, imbued with pain, but also resilience. "Sit," the girl said firmly, gesturing to a dusty crate. "We need to figure out a plan to save him." As she spoke, I glanced around, searching for courage amidst the wreckage of dreams, and something extraordinary happened. An old photo, corners torn and lifeless, caught my eye. It had stood a group of people resembling a makeshift family, arms raised in jubilation. It struck me how love brings a kind of warmth, even in despair. "Do you have anyone you can count on?" I asked suddenly, an unexpected impulse coursing through me. She looked startled and then turned away, the silence that followed feeling heavy, as she clearly grappled with her own ghosts. "I had a brother," she replied quietly, each word heavy with loss. "But he's gone now." Something deep within me writhed, a fresh wound meeting the air, and in that shared space of sadness, a bridge formed between us. "I'm sorry," I whispered, understanding flooding my words. I understand how that feels." Her posture relaxed ever so slightly, as if she realized we were both wanderers in this sea of pain. "We'll find a way," she promised, her strength coalescing with mine. Together. But just as I felt the flicker of hope ignite between us, a noise broke the stillness, sharp and terrible, the sound of footsteps approaching our hiding place, racing toward us with haste. The dread that surged anew was palpable, freezing time as I locked eyes with her, fear and determination blending into urgent action. "Hurry!" I hissed, breaking into motion as we dove behind old crates, hearts pounding like war drums. Each second felt endless as shadows crept closer, and beneath the weight of uncertainty, I sensed this moment would determine not just our fate, but the fate of the boy whose trust one had unintentionally forged. With my breath caught in my throat, I clutched the edge of a crate, whispering a silent vow to the universe this was just the beginning. No matter what unfolded next, I would not stumble back into the darkness. And with that thought, in the suffocating silence, I braced myself for whatever lay ahead. The footsteps grew louder, echoing ominously as I pressed myself against the cold, unforgiving surface of the crate, heart racing like a wild animal trying to escape a hunter. I exchanged a glance with the girl beside me, both of us suspended in a moment of shared fear and unspoken determination. The urgency of survival burned brightly, but in that moment, something deeper flickered beneath our dual sense of dread. "You're stronger than you know," she murmured, a whisper barely audible over the thumping of my heart, and it brought me unexpected solace. I nodded, though I hardly felt strong. There had been so much loss, so much grief. And yet, surrounded by remnants of lives forgotten, I could not shake the awareness that hope still lurked in the corners of shadows. But that sentiment was swiftly disrupted by a voice that cut through the air like a blade. "Check around the back. He won't get far." The girl tensed, and my grip tightened around the edge of the crate. A raw uncertainty twisted within me. Were we truly prepared to confront whatever darkness had come to hunt us? There was no time to ponder. Moments slipped like sand through our fingers, and we had to act. you have a way out?" I asked, my voice only a breath. Against the backdrop of impending chaos, I realized the girl had become my ally and my anchor. It was the only thing keeping me grounded. "There's a fire escape in the back. We can climb up, at least until they leave," she said, her voice steady against the storm. "But we have to move fast." I nodded, adrenaline sparking a charge through my veins. As we eased ourselves off our hiding spots, we only had fragments of a plan, just a threadbare hope fluttering in the face of overwhelming dread. But the thought of the boy out there, vulnerable and alone, propelled me forward. We crept toward the rear of the warehouse, and my resolve was ignited anew by thoughts of rescuing him. I had to take the risk. There was no room for doubt. With each step, the silhouettes of men loomed larger beyond the cracked windows, shadows that threatened to swallow all that I had come to believe in. On my signal, "We move," she whispered. My heart thundered in response, a drumbeat of shared purpose uniting us, transforming our solitary battles into a joint fight for survival. "Now," she said, and we bolted toward the back. Every stride was a heartbeat that echoed, the ground beneath our feet feeling both solid and treacherous, like a tightrope stretched over a chasm of despair. Time slowed, the world turned into a blur, and as we neared the fire escape, a piercing scream shattered the air. My heart seized at the sound of familiar wail that sent shockwaves through me. It was the boy. My breath caught as reality crashed around me. The very essence of my will, my newfound purpose, hung precariously in the balance. "That's him!" I shouted, propelled by an insatiable urgency. "We have to get to him." "Not yet." She grabbed my arm, but I was already pulling away, desperation clawing at my insides. I couldn't let him suffer. I wouldn't let my fear paralyze me. But the girl's eyes bored into mine, fierce and unyielding. "If you go now, you'll compromise everything. We need to play this smart." Yet even as she spoke, I could see her conviction wavering. Her plea echoed in my mind, but I was already moving, slipping toward the sound of distress that felt like a lifeline stretching out to me. "I can't just wait," I breathed, pressing forward despite her grip tightening around my wrist. "Wait!" she urged again, but I felt the invisible tether snapping. I could not let fear steal my chance. At that moment, I didn't just hear the boy's cries. I felt them resonate in my very soul, reaching out from the depths of desolation into the light of possibility. I needed to fight, not just for survival but for the glimmers of hope that shimmered on the outskirts of darkness. I broke free from her grasp, spiraling into the chaotic revelation that my decision was no longer an individual act. "Please!" I shouted back to her. "You can join me or not, but in not letting him down." Without looking back, each step propelled me toward the source of the boy's cries, feeling the sheer weight of my purpose transform into a palpable force. The warehouse loomed around me, each creak and groan echoing the adventures written in its scars. As I sprinted, adrenaline pounded in my ears, and I clutched at the whimsy of fate that spiraled this moment together. But just as I rounded the corner, an arm snagged my jacket, yanking me back into the shadows of a dank corner. It was him, a man with the laughter, the cloak of danger draped around him like a shroud. "You thought you could just waltz in and save the day?" he sneered, his breath close enough to suffocate me in his menace. "I won't let you hurt him," I insisted, a feeble cry against the storm of fear that swirled around me. In that moment, I realized the truth. Within the chaos, I was closer to breaking point than I had ever permitted myself to feel. And yet, inexplicably, there was a flash of solid ground beneath my feet, a flickering flame of hope that propelled me forward even as he tightened his grip. "Then let's see how far you'll go," he taunted, his voice a snake's hiss. The uncertainty loomed around me like an impending storm, and as he raised his hand, ready to strike, every instinct screamed to brace for impact. I stood on the precipice of uncertain destiny, a world of darkness ahead, knowing that the fight for the boy and for myself was only just beginning. In that disorienting moment of suspended time, my heart raced, and I realized that I had lost everything to find this purpose. I clenched my jaw, ready to defy the storms, and braced myself for what lay ahead, uncertain yet resolute in my journey. The grip of shadows tightened as the man laughed menacingly, a sharp, echoing sound that danced mockingly off the warehouse walls. Time stretched painfully, and the air grew thick, heavy with the scent of fear and desperation. My heart thudded in my chest, each beat a reminder of the boy's cries that still pierced the atmosphere like arrows, compelling me further into the unknown. I had only moments to act, but my will burned fiercely. With a snapped instinct, I twisted from his grasp, using my small frame to pivot. "You don't own me," I shouted, my voice striking out with an unexpected defiance. His laughter faltered for just a flicker, surprise momentarily replacing disdain. I seized the fraction of a second, shoving him away with all the strength born from my turmoil. The adrenaline surged anew, a hot current buoying me toward the distant echo of the boy's voice. I dashed forward, slipping around crates and machinery, navigating the labyrinth of forgotten lives as hope rekindled within me. But as I advanced, the dread clawed back at my ankles, the shadows darkened my resolve. I felt the man's footsteps behind me, a predator hot on my heels, but I couldn't look back. Defeat wasn't an option. The image of the boy, alone and scared, flickered through my mind, fortifying my strides. As I rounded the corner, a flicker of light caught my eye. Beyond a stack of crates, I found the sour smear of rusty metal that had once been a small door, slightly ajar. The boy's cries echoed just beyond it, an apparition threading through the damp air. But before I could rush forward, another figure came into view, a stocky man, with a scar that sliced through his brow, glaring at me with cold deliberation. "Look who we have here," he jeered, crossing his arms. Hero of the day, swallowing my fear, I met his gaze, adrenaline morphing my nerves into something palpable. Fear had shifted to determination. "Let him go!" I demanded, my voice steadier than I felt. The man chuckled, low and dangerous. "You think you can just come here and play savior? You have no idea what you're up against." He took a step closer, and I could see the flicker of something emotional beneath his bravado, a shadow of lost opportunities or choices made that had twisted into this dark reality, perhaps similar to mine. But before I could grasp the fleeting moment of understanding, his intent shifted to violence. He lunged, and I ducked, the edge of panic urging me forward beyond his reach. As I stumbled into the narrow doorway, the noise of the scuffle sent a jolt of urgency racing through me. "Please!" The boy's voice came again, choked and desperate. I had to silence the echo of my own doubts. This was my moment amid the chaos. The doorway creaked ominously as I burst through, revealing a dim room littered with broken toys and scraps of what looked like dreams collapsed. The boy lay huddled against the wall, a trembling figure in a sea of twisted metal and forgotten remnants. "Help!" he breathed, looking up with wide, terrified eyes that bore the weight of 1,000 unspoken fears. My heart wrenched at the sight, the innocence of his desperation igniting something fierce within me. "I'm here." I rushed to him, urgency propelling me forward. But I barely reached his side when the weight of the world crashed back. The scarred man stormed through the doorway, fury etched on his face. I knew I had but a heartbeat before chaos engulfed us again. "Run," I whispered to the boy, signaling him to stay low as I gathered my resolve. "Get away from here." His eyes darted between me and the approaching danger, confusion warring with trust, and I could see the flickering embers of hope spiral around us like a fragile lifeline. "But where will you go?" he asked, voice wavering, and that question nearly shattered me. "He'll follow you, just go," I urged, stepping in front of him as if I could shield him from the storm. In that moment, a twinge of guilt spiraled through me. I'd spent so long fighting for my own survival, and now I was responsible for someone else. It felt like a shattering switch, the weight of loss, and the fight for purpose converging in a single instant. The man lunged forward, and in that heartbeat, the air crackled with tension. Time moved like molasses, and every instinct told me to retreat, to protect myself, to escape. But I stood my ground, the boy's life hanging delicately between courage and despair. Then, just as the man's hand closed around my arm, a sudden brightness washed over us. The girl from before burst into the room, a wild spirit with fire in her eyes, wielding a crowbar she had previously scavenged. "Get away from her!" she cried, her voice echoing louder than the chaos around us, fierce and imbued with a protective force that sent shockwaves through the air. The man dodged, startled, and before I could grasp the extent of her bravery, she swung the crowbar, knocking him sideways and buying us precious seconds. "Go! Get him out!" she shouted to me. Hope sparked like a flash of lightning. As I dashed toward the boy, grabbing his hand, we rushed back toward the rear door. With the girl behind us, we propelled ourselves into the eerie corridors with an intensity that could shatter the darkness. But just as we neared the exit, the ground beneath us trembled, and a voice roared behind us, a voice I now recognized with dreadful clarity. "You think you can escape that easily?" The truth unfurled in a flash of horrifying realization. It was not just the man with the scar pursuing us. We were ensnared in a web woven from consequences I could never have anticipated. Armed men, shadows of betrayal and pain, were everywhere, boiling like storm clouds ready to unleash their wrath. In that moment, I was torn between the boy who had become the embodiment of my newfound purpose and the crushing dread of a past that was reaching out, grasping for me. The threats loomed larger than ever, and as daylight barely crept into the oppressive darkness of the warehouse, I faced a choice, one that would alter the course of my existence entirely. And as the shadows surged behind us, threatening to engulf everything we had fought for, a new scream echoed through the air, a haunting revelation that surged from the depths of desperation. I turned, the blood draining from my face as the truth cut through the fog. "They're here for you too," the boy's voice trembled, a broken promise haunting every word. Just as the shadows swept in, I knew that despair would chase us unless we could break free or find the key to unlocking not just our own chains, but those ensnared in the invisible clutches of darkness surrounding us. And in that moment of realization, I felt the ground shift, the world tilting on its axis, as hope began to coalesce alongside the terror that threatened to consume us whole. The cold air bit into my skin as we stumbled out of the warehouse, the racing thoughts in my mind colliding with the desperate reality we were thrust into. I could feel the pulse of the city around us, a living, breathing entity filled with misery and hope alike. I held tightly onto the boy's hand, his small fingers trembling against mine, as we dashed down the alley, the remnants of debris crunching beneath our hurried steps. "Where do we go?" he gasped, looking up with wide, fearful eyes that seemed so much older than his tender years. His trust weighed heavy on me, a burden that ignited the flickering flames of my resolve. "I don't know," I muttered, my gaze darting around for any signs of escape. Overhead, the sky clouded ominously, the setting sun casting jagged silhouettes against the buildings, a visual embodiment of chaos closing in around us. Just as doubts threatened to overcome my will, a soft voice broke into the cacophony of my thoughts. "This way." The girl from the warehouse, her name eluded me, but her spirit shone bright, like a lighthouse in a storm. She turned sharply, leading us down another alley, one swathed in shadows yet dotted with patches of light that seemed to beckon us forward. We followed her, the urgency fueling our strides, and for a moment, my apprehension faded. The adrenaline rushed through me, pushing us onward. I didn't want to look back, to succumb to the fear mounting behind us if every footstep brought a tighter grip around our throats. "Who are they?" The boy's voice cracked, pulling at the frayed edges of my resolve. The innocence of his question stabbed through my heart, and I struggled to find words to fend off the darkness creeping into our reality. Just people who want to control things, I managed, though I felt inadequate in the face of his confusion. But we're stronger together, okay? I glanced at him, hoping the warmth of my promise would shield him, at least momentarily, from the terrifying truth of our world. As we reached the end of the alley, the girl paused, her head cocked to the side as if listening. She turned back, her eyes narrowing with determination. We need to move quickly, away from their territory. There are places still safe, where we can catch our breath. Safe? The boy echoed, skepticism coating his disbelief. How could anything be safe? In that instant, I turned to him, catching the flicker of fear that danced in his gaze, a shadow of how my heart felt, caught halfway between despair and burgeoning hope. There are good people out there, ones who care. I promise. But even as I said it, the uncertainty of our fates loomed like a storm brewing on the horizon, relentless and wild. Our breaths intertwined, and my heartbeat drummed a frantic rhythm echoing the disarray rattling within me. We turned a corner, and the shadows deepened ominously, the alley narrowing as graffiti-covered walls stretched upward, blocking out the fading light. My mind raced back to my own struggles, the loneliness of fighting against a world meant to swallow me whole. I remembered the faces of those who hadn't made it, those who had lost their spark, and I fought to not let their stories fade, to instill the flame of survival in this boy who still believed. Just then, the distant rumble of voices made the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. I glanced at the girl, both of us understanding the weight of the moment as panic seeped in like a slow poison. "Hide," she hissed, motioning us to press against the cold, unforgiving wall, as her body shifted between us and the oncoming threat. Our hearts collided in unison, a fragile syncopation underscoring the chaos around us. The voices grew louder, their tone threatening, and I felt the boy's grip tighten painfully around my hand. Out in the open, two figures emerged, lithe and menacing, their silhouettes writhing just beyond the flickers of light. "They won't make it far," one sneered, a menacing smile breaking the shadows across their face, while the other grunted in agreement, their features hidden in the dark waves of hesitation. I squeezed the boy's hand, the warmth of his hope intertwining with my own determination. "Stay quiet," I whispered, though my voice trembled like the undercurrent of fear that swirled in the air around us. We pressed ourselves deeper into the shadows, breath held in anxious anticipation, as the footsteps crept closer. I could see the glint of something shiny in the first man's hand, a weapon, stark and threatening in the dim light. Just when it felt like the dread would engulf us completely, the girl made her move. With a sudden, fierce intensity, she darted from our hiding spot, flinging herself into the flickering light. "Over here!" she yelled, drawing the men's attention away from us. Time paused as I watched her determination blaze anew. It was an act of bravery that inspired awe, igniting a desperate surge of hope within me. She gave us a chance, perhaps the only chance we would have. The boy tugged at my sleeve, his voice barely above a whisper, "We can't leave her." For a moment, the world shattered around Meth's weight of choices and consequences crashing over like waves against an unsuspecting shore. "We have to," I choked, urgency swamping my resolve as I felt reality press down on my shoulders. "We can't be caught if they take us. We'll never have another chance." But the boy's unwavering gaze pierced through my defenses, and I saw the flicker of a spirit that echoed my own. "No," he insisted, eyes fierce and burning with innocence. "She's fighting for us." And then it hit me with a clarity so sharp, it felt like a revelation. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. The abandoned toys in that room, the desperate cries echoing behind the shadows, had tethered my very purpose to this child, and now, to this fierce girl as well. "Okay," I whispered, and in that moment, the weight of every loss and moment of pain crystallized into a determined focus. "We go together." With renewed purpose, I pulled the boy close, and we rushed back toward the girl. The dance of shadows whispered reminders of our precarious journey, yet a sense of hope began to blossom amid the dueling emotions swelling within me. But just as we reached her, shouts erupted behind us, low and angry, screaming our names into the dark. "Run!" the girl urged, her urgency flaring as she turned, eyes ablaze with fear and strength. And for the first time, the shadows felt like they were receding. As we took off together, three unyielding spirits bound by fate, I couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was at stake, a truth echoing beneath the surface of our shared resolve. But just as we cleared the alley, a sharp cry split the air, one I recognized all too well, echoing from the past, pulling at the threads of my heart. "They're coming! You want escape?" We halted, the echoes of betrayal and fear intertwining, and I turned slowly to face the reality blossoming before me, unable to breathe as anger and despair clawed at my insides. "Who was that?" the girl panted, glancing back. I didn't answer. In that instant, I felt the air crisp with a chilling clarity. This was never just about survival. It was about facing the shadows that haunted us, confronting the truths we buried deep within our souls. The hourglass of despair was counting down, darkness creeping back to snatch away everything we had just begun to hold onto. And as dread settled in my gut, an unsettling realization emerged, standing between us and a brighter future where hearts still shackled by betrayal, and it was time to shake them free or face a darkness that threatened to consume us whole. The streets breathed with a palpable tension as we stood frozen, hearts racing in unison. The sharp cry that echoed from the shadows lingered in the air like a charging storm, and I felt the boy's hand tremble against mine. No longer were we just soundless echoes in the alleys. We were the protagonists of our own uncertain fable, facing adversities we never anticipated. "Who was that?" the girl pressed, urgency buzzing through her voice like electricity. I swallowed hard, wanting to shield her from the truth. A figure who screamed my name was a ghost of my past, a misguided betrayal that had left scars deeper than any gash. Torn between self-preservation and the responsibility I felt for this fragile trio, I chose silence, fearing that revealing too much would shred the newfound resilience binding us. "We need to go." I finally broke the hush that surrounded us, forcing my voice to regain its steadiness. Before they regroup, with a swift nod from the girl, we resumed our desperate flight, my heart a wild thing against the confines of my chest. We ducked down another narrow alley, the damp walls absorbing our presence, leaving sounds like whispers behind. As we ran, I could feel the boy lagging slightly, his breath quick and shallow. I crouched low, glancing back at him with what I hoped was encouragement. "Stay with me," I urged, the urgency knitting my brow. He nodded, eyes bright with determination, but a hint of vulnerability lingered in his gaze, as if he were still wrestling with the emotions of the chaos. Sometimes I felt like he was playing out a role far too big for his years, and the burden of it all clawed at my chest with every step we took. "Keep following me," the girl called back, her fiery spirit unwavering, urging us to catch up. I admired her bravery, an ember glowing amidst the shadows of uncertainty, and yet the fear nestled in the back of my mind whispered bitter truth. So long could she sustain that light before it flickered out? We turned a corner, finding ourselves on a street bustling with life, perhaps a sanctuary from the chaos that sought to engulf us. Colorful stalls peppered the landscape, and the aroma of grilled street food drifted, a fleeting taste of normalcy among the panic. I could see out of the corner of my eye a few kind faces, but they were wrapped in their own realities, disconnected from the turmoil threatening to consume us. My heart sank slightly, realizing how much of our journey depended on fleeting kindness that could easily disappear with one wrong turn. "We can stop here, just for a moment, to rest," I suggested, needing to gather my thoughts, needing to hold on to any flicker of permanence. The girl met my gaze but bit her lip, concern shadowing her brow. "They'll find us," she said, glancing back toward the alley. We fled as if danger could materialize from the very air that surrounded us. "I know," I replied softly, steeling myself against the uncertainty rippling through her. But we need strength to keep going. We're not dead yet. The boy fidgeted, his eyes darting between the stalls and us, contemplation dancing on his face. Can we get food? He asked, the hint of yearning a painful reminder that in times of distress, even the simplest desires felt monumental. It felt sacrilegious to consider anything more than survival in that moment, a cruel indulgence amid a ruthless world. Yet the tinge of hope emanating from him was infectious. All right, just a moment, and then we're off, I conceded, my voice steadying as I looked toward the array of street vendors, watching as laughter sparked among families' ordinary lives unheard in our desperate orchestral chaos. We shuffled toward a nearby stall selling skewered meats sizzling over a small grill, the enticing scent inviting us to linger. The vendor, an older man with kind eyes, caught our gaze, recognition washing over me as his face crinkled into a gentle smile. "What can I get for you, my young friends?" His voice was a balm to my weary heart, the simple warmth and unexpected reprieve in the midst of turmoil. "Our friend is hungry," I said, inclining my head toward the boy. "What can you offer?" It felt surreal to share this moment, a target set against the shadows lurking just beyond the safe cocoon that surrounded us. "Ah, for the brave little one, I have just the thing," the vendor exclaimed, his hands working deftly, quickly assembling a plate meat skewers glistening with spices, fragrant rice, and a small portion of vegetables. "Eat up. You need your strength." I was taken aback by the raw kindness extended toward us. Did he recognize our plight? Or was he merely a synecdoche of decency in an otherwise fractured world? The boy's eyes lit up as he accepted the plate, the warmth of the food igniting hope within him. The spark was stunning, an instant reminder of why we fought and ran and grieved, because moments of light existed even where darkness threatened to consume. As he took the first bite, his demeanor shifted, anxiety faded, replaced by palpable joy. The girl smiled, the edges of her lips softening as she observed his delight, and for an instant, an unspoken bond of understanding linked the three of us. "Stay together," I whispered, imagining the bonds fortified through shared meals, perhaps remnants of familial love that had evaded us for so long. But just then, the warning bell tolled and my Menda's shadow flitted past my periphery. I turned sharply, my stomach dropping as I recognized the figures emerging from the alley we had just fled. The men were back, their presence a storm cloud hovering darkly above our momentary haven, and dread dripped into my veins, like cold rain seeping down my back. "Look what we have here," one of them sneered, eyes glinting with cruel satisfaction. "Playing house in the market, are we?" Panic surged through me, the jubilance of that shared moment shattering like glass underfoot. The boy dropped his food, innocence staining his expression, while the girl steeled herself, ready to fight even if it felt hopeless. Before I could speak, before I could conjure any semblance of a plan, the world slipped once more into chaos as the darkness of my past bore down upon us. "Run!" I screamed, instincts thrusting me forward, desperate to shield them, desperate to reclaim our shared light, even as the shadows continued to creep closer, determined to pull us under. As I rushed forward, the echoes of fear pulsing in my veins, I felt the ground shift beneath my feet, and the weight of my choices crashing hard against me. I couldn't let this moment the fragile bond we had created shatter under the pressure of those who thrived on the suffering of others. "This way!" I yelled, my voice straining against the turmoil, urging the boy and the girl beside me to follow as I tore through the crowded street. We twisted and turned, navigating through alleyways that pulsed with life yet bore witness to our urgency. Each step felt like it could either bring us closer to safety or pull us deeper into despair. Adrenaline coursed through me, a wild current guiding my every move. The boy clung to my hand tightly, his small fingers trembling but resolute. I felt his fear mingling with mine, a potent reminder of the stakes surrounding us. We were not just fighting for our lives, we were fighting for the flicker of hope that had sparked on this chaotic journey. I led them toward a nearby park, a place I'd once frequented when life felt simpler, though the memories were now tainted with bittersweet nostalgia. My heart raced as I espied a cluster of trees, a dense thicket where we could hide, where we might find a moment's reprieve from the shadows snapping at our heels. "Over there!" I shouted, directing them toward the cover of the branches. We ducked beneath the foliage, hearts pounding as we crushed the sharp remnants of dried leaves underfoot. Crouching low, we leaned against the sturdy trunk of a tree, breaths coming in ragged gasps. The boy glanced up at me, eyes wide and shining. "Are we safe?" he whispered, grasping my hand tighter. "I think so," I replied, although my heart remained a fragile thrum of uncertainty. The girl bit her lip, scanning our surroundings, aware that safety in this world felt as fleeting as the last shards of daylight. But just as the weight of silence enveloped us, the distant shouts from the street broke through the stillness, threatening to shatter our moment of calm. "We have to make a decision," the girl urged, determination coloring her voice. "They'll find us if we stay here." I nodded, understanding the peril that lay ahead. "We can't keep running from our past," I said, the truth settling heavily in the air. We had to confront the darkness that chased us, to face the ghosts that threatened to consume us whole. And it was at that moment, as I looked into the eyes of the boy beside me, so full of innocence amidst the chaos, that everything shifted. I felt the urge to protect him, to shelter him from the storms looming ahead, but I also felt a deep, swirling sense of purpose engulf me. "No," I said softly yet firmly, glancing at the girl. "We fight this together. We stand." She nodded, a flicker of admiration glinting in her eyes, and the boy's grip tightened around my hand in silent agreement. We understood the risks, yet stood resolute against the tidal wave threatening to pull us down. "Let's find them," I urged, a wildfire burning in my gut as I thought of the boy still at the mercy of those faceless shadows, trapped in the abyss of uncertainty and fear. "We can't abandon anyone else to this darkness." We emerged from our hiding spot, stepping back into the world which had nearly swallowed us whole. My heart pounded wildly in my chest as I led the way, each stride a declaration of strength forged from vulnerability. We would not succumb to shadows that chased us this time. We would make our stand. Just as we approached the edge of the park, I caught sight of a familiar figure standing by the entrance, a beacon amidst the chaos. "Sam!" My breath caught at the sight of him, a blur of worry and determination etched on his features. "You found them!" he shouted, relief flooding his expression as he rushed towards us. But before we could reach him, the shadows billowed outward, a pack of men surging like a wave, faces illuminated by the fading light, their anger and resentment palpable. My heart sank. We were too late. "Get down!" I shouted instinctively, shoving the boy behind me, my body instinctively reacting to protect those I had come to care for. The girl mirrored my movement, her resolve unyielding. This was the moment we had summoned, the confrontation we had both avoided and yearned for. "Enough!" I yelled as the aggressors advanced, fear whirling in my gut but clarity sharpening my voice. "You think you can take what isn't yours? We're not your playthings." The men halted, surprise flickering through their eyes. They had expected us to cower, to submit, but there we stood, three against a storm of rage, unwilling to yield. "Get the kid," one of them barked, eyes swirling with feverish intent. "He's the weak link." "No!" I shouted, my voice ringing with defiance. "You want him? You'll have to go through me first." For a moment, everything settled into a tense stillness, the air thick with emotion, our collective breath caught in our throats. And just then, something extraordinary happened. The shadows began to shift. Others began to emerge from behind the trees, faces filled with solidarity, having watched us all along. "Stand back!" yelled a voice I recognized, an old artist who had once painted alongside me in those vibrant gatherings beneath the overpass. With him came poets and musicians, those warriors of light, who had wandered through the same darkness, emboldened by a shared sense of purpose. The men faltered, realizing the tide was turning. They'd meant to instill fear, but instead had unknowingly incited a spark of collective strength. "No one stands alone," Sam shouted, stepping beside me, unwavering against the encroaching darkness. The group stood firm, refusing to back down, prepared to confront whatever storm raged ahead. "Let them go," the familiar artist shouted, pockets full of promise daring to challenge the chaos, "or well make you wish you hadn't crossed this line." The fierce chorus thrummed through the crowd like a heartbeat, unifying our purpose. And as the men weighed their options, I felt the tightening weight of fear stretch and spark into something breathtaking, an understanding that we had all fought separately until now, but together, we had the power to rewrite our narratives. The edge of turmoil crested, as the bravado of completeness began to envelop us. I turned to the boy, my heart swelling with resolve. "Do you believe in us?" I asked gently, locking eyes, willing him to grasp the glimmers of hope sprouting from despair. "Yes," he breathed, not a trace of doubt in his small voice that somehow held the weight of the world. "Then this is our moment," I asserted, striding forward as if to pull every ounce of courage from the fleeting shadows. And in that moment, a profound shift ignited. The invisible threads weaving our destinies became palpable, binding us like a tapestry. We were woven together in a world rife with chaos, but united in our purpose and undaunted in the face of darkness. With our voices raised, we surged forward, an unstoppable wave of hope breaking against the shadows. There were more challenges ahead, painful truths still waiting to be faced, but in that moment, we were alive, and we dared to fight not just for ourselves, but for each other. It was the birth of resilience, a blooming in the darkest of nights. And as I stood shoulder to shoulder with the boy, the girl, and so many others ready to face their fears, I knew that together, we had forged a narrative of light amid despair. Life is never single-threaded. It is woven in the colors of every moment we embrace, and I have learned that even in the depths of darkness, connection can be our saving grace. And as I felt the warmth of their presence beside me, my heart swelled with one unbreakable truth that would guide our journey moving forward. We are never truly lost if we dare to stand together, for in our light we find purpose, and in purpose hope. And in that shimmering understanding, just like an artist blending colors onto a canvas, we became the masterpiece of our own survival, beautiful, chaotic, and unmistakably alive.